Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we are taking a deep dive into a life that really, it just defies any simple categorization.
Hmm.
It's a story that's rooted in the complex realities of 19th century America. It's right at that seam where, public fascination just collides with this profound medical mystery.
Right.
We're talking about Josephine Myrtle Corbin, a woman born with an extremely rare anatomical anomaly who became, well, globally famous as the four-legged girl from Texas.
And for you, our focus today is really to move beyond that sensational stage name and get into the detailed historical record.
Yeah.
We're going to be sifting through these contemporaneous medical journal reports, biographical sources, and some personal accounts that reveal the extraordinary challenge and ultimately the success of her life.
So what's the mission here?
Our mission is to transform the complex, and let's be honest, sometimes very cold documentation of her condition, which is known as dipygus, into an organized and I think compassionate understanding of her career, her marriage, her motherhood, and her lasting battle for dignity.
It's a phenomenal mission.
Hmm.
Because the deeper you go into her story, the more that sideshow spectacle just kind of fades away.
It does.
And the resilience of the individual really takes center stage. To truly grasp the magnitude of her life, we have to start with the fundamental anatomical reality she was navigating.
Right.
Let's start by establishing the physical foundation of her existence and, the context of her early years.
Okay, so to begin, we have to clearly define the congenital condition that shaped her entire life, dipygus.
Dipygus, okay.
Essentially, this is an extremely rare developmental anomaly. It results from the body axis splitting or duplicating during very early embryonic growth.
So wait, this isn't just a mutation of her limbs or something. This is a fundamental duplication of her entire lower half.
Exactly. It's a form of conjoined twinning, but it occurred primarily in the lower torso. The main physical result was the duplication of her entire pelvic structure.
The entire thing.
The entire thing. She had two separate pelvises situated side by side, oriented downward from her waist, and this meant a complete set of structures, including the legs, external genitalia, and as we'll get into later, the internal organs. They were all mirrored.
Which means she had 4 legs in total.
4 legs!
That sounds so striking.
Yeah.
But what was the actual, functional reality for her day-to-day life?
Functionally, it was really a study in duality. She had 2 fully functional, normal-sized outer legs.
Okay.
Those were the ones she used for walking, standing, bearing her full weight. But each of those outer legs was paired with a smaller, underdeveloped inner leg, which was attached to that secondary pelvis.
So the inner ones were different.
Very different. The sources clarify that while these inner legs were said to be movable, they were absolutely too small and too weak to ever support her weight.
So she couldn't walk on them.
Not at all. They couldn't be used for locomotion. They were essentially non-functional. I mean, a striking visual feature that obviously defined her public persona, but ultimately just extra appendages she carried.
That distinction is so critical. Her mobility relied on her 2 main legs, but the other 2 were the focus of the entire world's gaze. So, knowing this incredibly complex start, let's look at her origins. She was born May 12, 1868 in Lincoln County, Tennessee. What do we know about her family?
Well, her parents, William H. Corbin, who was 25, and Nancy Corbin, who was 34, they were crucial to the initial medical documentation.
Right, because at that time, any congenital difference would spark this intense interest in heredity, right?
Intense is the word. And the Corbins already had 4 children, including a child from Nancy's first marriage, so this was an established family.
And this leads us to that fascinating, almost, defensive note that the examining physicians included about her parents' appearance.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The level of scrutiny was so high that physicians felt they needed to head off any speculation about the cause.
What do they say?
They explicitly documented that both parents shared very similar physical traits: auburn hair, blue eyes, fair complexions. This similarity was so striking that the doctors, when they were reporting the case in the medical journals, felt they had to include this clarifying statement. They wrote that the Corbins were not bloodkin.
Wow. They had to actually write that down. That small detail just speaks volumes about the societal anxieties of the time, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they were operating in this climate where theories of eugenics and heredity were just starting to gain traction.
So any difference was immediately investigated through that lens.
Yes. Through the lens of genetic error or consanguinity, the doctors had to make sure their documentation was, unimpeachable against those fears. The need for that clarification just underscores the medical fixation on family causes for these conditions.
So moving from the parents to the birth itself.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a complicated anatomy, yet the delivery was reported as standard.
It's astonishing. Her mother, Nancy, reported that there was nothing peculiar about the labor or delivery.
And yet the doctors must have seen the danger.
Oh, they were quick to observe the extreme danger. They explicitly stated that if the presentation had been breech, where the duplicated lower body emerged first, it would have proved fatal to the infant and possibly to the mother.
So a safe delivery was really just a matter of pure luck, the fetal position.
Exactly. She was incredibly fortunate to survive the birth canal.
But often, infants with such severe anomalies can be frail. Was that the case for Myrtle?
Quite the reverse, actually. The records paint this picture of extraordinary early health.
Really?
Just 3 weeks after her birth, she already weighed a robust 10 pounds.
10 pounds, wow.
Which is about 4.5 kilograms. And a medical journal from that year noted that she nurses healthily and was thriving well.
That strength was critical then.
It meant she wasn't just some medical marvel who survived a difficult delivery. She was a genuinely strong, healthy child who could develop normally, and that really set the stage for a full, active adult life.
That resilience from day one just becomes this recurring theme in her story.
It really does.
And knowing the incredible physical and social challenges she faced, it becomes even more remarkable that at just 13 years old, she decided to take that uniqueness and turn it into a high-profile career.
That transition from a child in rural Tennessee to a professional performer. It is abrupt. But it was often the path to financial independence for people with unique physical differences in the 19th century.
The Sideshow provided visibility, but also money.
Critically, money. And she entered the circuit very early, at age 13.
And here's where it gets really interesting in terms of branding and persona. She quickly got the name that became her public identity. The four-legged girl from Texas. But wait, what, Texas? You said she was born in Tennessee?
It was pure 19th century marketing genius, wasn't it?
I guess so.
Tennessee just doesn't have the same ring to it or the same evocative quality as Texas. Sideshow managers understood that the name needed to be exotic, memorable, and a little larger than life.
Texas suggested ruggedness, maybe?
Exactly. A wildness, a novelty that fit the spectacle better than a quiet farming county in Tennessee. The brand was built on promotional punch, not just fact.
And the promotional language they used. It's a fascinating window into how they managed public fear and curiosity. What did the pamphlets actually say?
Well, they used language that was specifically designed to reassure the audience. They acknowledged the difference, but they really emphasized her humanity and her sweetness.
Okay.
One pamphlet described her as being gentle of disposition as the summer sunshine and as happy as the day is long.
So it wasn't just flowery language.
Not at all. It was a calculated strategy. It was meant to draw in middle-class, respectable viewers who might otherwise have been, intimidated by the word monster. It normalized the spectacle just enough to make it profitable.
That balance. Showcasing the extraordinary physical reality while constantly reassuring the audience of her pleasant, non-threatening personality. That must have been a tightrope walk for her entire career. How successful was she? What was the scale of her popularity?
Oh, her success was enormous. She was a massive draw. And her fame really provides a crucial context for understanding the whole sideshow economy of the time.
How so?
The demand to see the genuinely unique was so high that it led to widespread fraud in the industry.
You're talking about the phenomenon of the gaffs.
Precisely. A gaff was an industry term for a falsified exhibit, a fake.
So people were actually faking her condition.
Yes. Myrtle Corbin's drawing power was so significant that other, less scrupulous showmen resorted to exhibiting four-legged gaffs. These were often elaborate illusions or sometimes other performers wearing cleverly disguised prosthetics or costumes.
The fact that people were willing to fake her condition to make money. That tells you everything you need to know about the profit margins of her genuine spectacle.
It speaks to her market dominance. Her unique existence basically validated the entire subgenre. Even after she'd stopped performing, the sources indicate that the market vacuum was filled by these phony four-legged women. Her cultural imprint was so powerful that the fake versions of her persisted for years, long after the original had left the stage.
So it's clear the public viewed her through this lens of spectacle and curiosity. Before we get into how she moved past that, let's look at how the medical community saw her.
Right.
The language they used to classify her condition, teratology, the study of congenital anomalies, it's so dense and, frankly, brutally clinical.
It's overwhelming, but I think understanding the terminology gives us insight into the 19th century mind trying to categorize the fundamentally unknown.
Okay.
They didn't have the genetic tools we have today. All they had was observation and this classical classification system rooted in Greek and Latin. The terms were an effort to place her novelty into a precise, if complex, clinical framework.
Okay, let's break down some of those terms, because they sound like they were ripped straight out of a medieval text.
Many classified her using variations that attempted to describe the full extent of the duplication. For instance, dipygus, dibrachys tetrapus.
Okay, dipygus, dibrachys, tetrapus. Break that down for us.
Okay, so dipygus, as we said, means the duplication of the lower half of the body.
Right.
Tetrapus means 4 feet. And the dibrachys aspect, meaning 2 arms, was to distinguish her from anomalies that might have included duplicated upper limbs as well.
So it was a rigorous, if cumbersome, attempt at precision.
It was. Other practitioners used terms like posterior dichotomy, subvariety sixorachis, which literally means a splitting of the back structures, including the spine.
And then there's the term that sounds the most archaic and, well, dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Used by Dr. Brooks H. Wells.
Yes. Wells categorized her as female belonging to the monocephalic Eladelphic class of monsters by fusion.
Monsters by fusion. That is a jarring label to apply to a living, breathing, performing teenager.
It is. The term monocephalic means one head, confirming she was a single individual, not a fully conjoined twin.
Okay.
Eladelphic refers to the fused pelvic structure, the duplication joined together. But the use of monster, it really reflects the limits of 19th century nomenclature. They just lacked a modern, neutral term for such complex anomalies.
So they defaulted to this classical idea of unusual, unnatural births.
Exactly. It showcases the vast chasm between the cold language of science and the lived human reality.
But thankfully, the same medical community that provided those sterile classifications also provided a humanizing bridge. Dr. Lewis Whaley, who would become pivotal in her life, gave us a description that went beyond the Latin.
Yes. Whaley's documentation, which was published in the prestigious British Medical Journal, is crucial because he saw her as an individual, not just a specimen.
Right.
He noted her physical appearance, her intelligence. He wrote, "She's about 5 feet high, has fair skin, blue eyes, and curly hair, and is very intelligent."
And he also wrote,
"A stranger, to see her in company, would only think her unusually broad across her hips, and with the carriage usual to one with clubbed foot."
That is such a powerful statement. It completely minimizes the spectacle. To a passing stranger, the 4 legs weren't the dominant feature.
It was just an unusual gait and width across the hips.
This insight tells us she wasn't a circus freak 24/7. She was a woman who was capable of blending into society when she wasn't on stage.
And that emphasis on her being very intelligent and having an attractive appearance starts to paint the picture of the woman who is capable of attracting a partner and moving successfully into a private domestic life, which is exactly the next chapter of her story.
That personal transition marks such a dramatic shift. Myrtle Corbin traded the constant glare of the limelight for the privacy of marriage and family. In 1886, at 18 years old, she married James Clinton Bicknell.
And this was a true turning point. This was a woman who had spent 5 years as a public curiosity. Marriage grounded her.
And they went on to have a large family.
A very large family. They successfully raised 5 children, 4 daughters and 1 son. And this shift is immediately apparent in the medical literature itself.
How so?
When physicians wrote about her in journals, they often dropped the sensational name Myrtle Corbin or the 4-legged girl.
And what did they call her?
They referred to her simply by her new status, Mrs. B.
The use of Mrs. B feels so symbolic. It signifies her identity had shifted from performer and curiosity to a respected married woman, but one who, because of her anatomy, would soon become a patient and a subject of intense clinical study.
That intense scrutiny began about a year into her marriage. In the spring of 1887, Mrs. B became pregnant for the first time.
And the discovery wasn't through routine care, right? It was because she was gravely ill.
She was very ill. This occurred in Blountsville, Alabama, under the care of Dr. Lewis Whaley, the same doctor who gave that humanizing description of her.
What were the symptoms that brought her to him?
Her initial symptoms were very concerning. Intense pain localized to her left side, accompanied by fever, headache, a decreased appetite, and crucially, a 2-month history of persistent vomiting and amenorrhea.
The absence of her menstrual cycle.
Exactly. These were symptoms of a serious internal crisis, which Dr. Whaley immediately suspected was related to pregnancy, given the amenorrhea.
The very idea that she could even conceive must have been monumental. The medical world must have been waiting to confirm the extent of her internal anomaly.
And this is where the case truly becomes groundbreaking. Whaley's subsequent internal examination revealed the complete anatomical reality of her condition.
Which was?
The external duplication was perfectly mirrored internally. She possessed a duplication of uteri.
So it was a complete mirror inside and out. It wasn't just skin deep. It was a near complete split of the entire reproductive and pelvic system.
Exactly. She essentially had two complete, separate, and potentially functional internal systems.
And where did Whaley determine the pregnancy was occurring?
The initial pregnancy was located and developing in her left uterus, and this anatomical revelation that a woman with her classification could not only be sexually active but successfully conceive, it immediately elevated her case from a sideshow curiosity to a global medical phenomenon.
Which brings us to what is arguably the most surprising and intimate detail preserved in the entire medical record.
It is.
When Dr. Whaley told Mrs. B that she was pregnant, she gave him a retort that offered this unprecedented glimpse into her private life.
Her response was incredibly candid. And it was so surprising that it was immediately documented in the medical journals, which speaks to the shock value it carried even for these hardened 19th century physicians.
What'd she say?
She replied, "If it had been in my right side, I would come nearer believing you are correct."
That is absolutely astonishing. It's a spontaneous, unguarded comment that tells us so much. Why was that one sentence considered so crucial by the medical community?
Well, the clinical significance was twofold. First, it confirmed the functionality and the separate nature of the two sexual systems. She could clearly feel the difference between the two sides.
Right.
Second, it provided this rare human detail about sexual behavior in a time when medical reporting was notoriously detached and formal. Physicians immediately concluded that this comment implied she preferred, or was certainly more accustomed to, intercourse utilizing the right side.
So this highly personal preference instantly became a matter of international clinical record.
It did. It shattered the anonymity usually granted to patients. It transitions her from just a clinical description of organs to a complex human being with agency and preference.
And the doctors actually published that.
Oh, yes. This detail was deemed significant enough to be commented upon in several subsequent reports across multiple medical journals. For them, it validated the functional, separate nature of the systems in a way no anatomical drawing could, through a woman's lived, intimate experience.
But despite the profound nature of this discovery, that initial pregnancy was dangerous for her health.
It was gravely dangerous. Her symptoms worsened, her condition became critical. Dr. Whaley, after consulting with his colleagues, determined that intervention was necessary to save her life.
So an abortion was performed.
It was. When she was estimated to be between 3 and 4 months pregnant, about 8 weeks after his initial examination.
That must have been an incredibly serious procedure in that era, made even riskier by her unique internal structure. What was the outcome?
The outcome was entirely positive. She made a full and complete recovery from the procedure. And this is the truly triumphant part of her story.
Yeah.
The medical crisis and the complex intervention did not prevent her from having a family. She went on to successfully carry all her subsequent pregnancies to term, resulting in her 5 healthy children. Her body, despite its uniqueness, proved fully capable of sustaining life.
As she matured and became a mother, the medical journals, both here and internationally, they came back to her case. But now their reports had shifted from just anatomy to character assessments.
Yes, the renewed scrutiny offered a genuinely insightful portrait of the woman behind the spectacle. It actively works to counter the sensationalism of her stage career.
What did they say about her?
These articles emphasize her domestic capability and her intelligence. One medical article specifically described her not just as healthy, but noted that she was attractive in face, physically well, and able to attend to all her household duties.
She sounds like she defied every expectation of the time for sideshow figures, who were often portrayed as passive or tragic.
Absolutely. Furthermore, she was lauded as being very intelligent and even a refined woman of some musical taste.
Refined woman of some musical taste. That is a world away from the four-legged girl from Texas on the carnival poster.
It confirmed she wasn't just surviving, she was thriving, a wife, a mother of 5, managing a home, and intellectually engaged, all while navigating an anatomical reality that had made her a global marvel.
Myrtle Corbin lived this full life, marked by that unique duality between public spectacle and intensely scrutinized private resilience. She died in Cleburne, Texas on May 6, 1928.
Just 6 days shy of her 60th birthday.
So her life concluded, but the story of her body was far from over. This final chapter details a really profound and moving act of defiance by her family.
It really does. The immediate aftermath of her death highlights the intense, almost predatory financial interest that followed her throughout her life.
How so?
Medical practitioners, anatomy collectors, private institutions, they knew the extreme rarity of a well-documented dipygus case that had reached adulthood and successfully reproduced.
So they had standing offers for her corpse.
Yes. To the scientific and collection community, she was an invaluable specimen.
And the history of medicine is unfortunately rife with stories of resurrectionists or grave robbers stealing unique remains for study.
Exactly. Her family was fighting against a very real historical threat. They knew that a conventional burial was not enough to protect her from determined, financially motivated individuals.
So they had to take extraordinary measures.
Defensive measures to ensure that her body would not be exhumed, dissected, and ultimately displayed as an anatomical curiosity. This desperation led to the dramatic final solution, the concrete burial.
Tell us about that final, powerful detail.
To prevent grave robbers from getting to her corpse, her family covered the casket in concrete.
Just poured concrete over it.
Poured concrete over the casket. And this wasn't a quick fix. It required planning and vigilance. The sources emphasize that various family members maintained a dedicated vigil, keeping watch over the gravesite until the concrete was fully cured and impenetrable.
They stood guard. Wow! That vigilance is maybe the most profound part of the story.
It is.
It speaks to the relentless pressure she faced her whole life to be a specimen and the ultimate final commitment of her family to view her and protect her as a person.
The concrete was a literal barrier against the commodification that had defined her career. It was the last definitive boundary set between her public persona and her private dignity.
They made sure she was buried as Josephine Myrtle Corbin Bicknell, a wife and a mother.
And not as the four-legged girl from Texas, the specimen. That act is such a powerful commentary on the ethics of collecting and displaying human difference.
And while that act was decisive and final, her story hasn't faded. She continues to have this enduring legacy in modern culture.
Indeed. A prominent modern reference is the 2015 collection of poems, Four-Legged Girl by Diane Seuss.
And that collection was a finalist for the 2016 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. The fact that a life lived under the gaze of 19th century sideshows is revisited through modern poetry confirms that her experiences of identity, of visibility, of navigating an extraordinary body are still vital touchstones for exploring the human experience. This deep dive into the life of Myrtle Corbin has been a journey through some remarkable duality. We've explored a life that began with an extreme anatomical anomaly, requiring complex Latin classification as a potential monster. And yet she built a global career, then successfully transitioned to a domestic life, managed a unique reproductive anatomy to bear 5 children, and was lauded by physicians as an intelligent, refined, and capable woman.
What's so fascinating here is that stark contrast between the clinical detection of 19th century science, which classified her using cold, dense, sometimes dehumanizing terminology, and the reality that was observed by those who actually knew her. She lived a full domestic life despite circumstances that science struggled to comprehend. Her ultimate value to her family, underscored by that dramatic final decision to encase her body in concrete, emphasizes the human being over the biological specimen. It was a profound, costly, and necessary final defense of her privacy.
It's a phenomenal note to end on. We've highlighted her anatomy, her career, but that decision by her family to protect her remains with concrete. That's the narrative anchor.
It forces us to reflect. What does that final definitive act tell us about the ethics of collecting, studying, and displaying human difference? Both then, when her body was a financial commodity, and now in an age of genetic data and bioethics.
The tension between scientific curiosity and personal sanctity is timeless.
It really is.
The battle to define oneself on one's own terms often continues even after death. We encourage you to reflect on that question. What other historical figures treated as specimens or spectacles also fought, or whose families fought for, dignity and privacy that went far beyond the boundaries of a simple grave? Myrtle Corbin's story is a testament to resilience, but her family's final act is a powerful testament to love and defense.